Hey, it's the Mad Pirate Baby again, and posting on my former workout channel, Billy Ate My Soul, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about infantilization, which is a form of abuse, and it's really hard for people who, oh gosh, my hair looks awful. Anyway, ignore the hair, pay attention. Oh, pay attention to the fabulous nails and pay attention to the message. So, a lot of people who have been infantilized have a hard time seeing it as abuse. So, what is infantilization? That's basically where the parent in the relationship or the adult does not treat the child, even the adult child, in an age-appropriate manner. So you run across this in, say, parents who are still active and checking in on their adult children's bank accounts, people who are in their 20s who've never done a load of laundry before. And this is presented as caring, but basically the real job of a parent is to work themselves out of a job. And if you have a kid who's occasionally nervous or pushing back a little bit on doing the normal kid stuff, you're supposed to sort of push them and encourage them to become self-actualized and independent human beings, and that is the absolute last thing an infantilizer wants. So there's sort of two motivations behind this, and sometimes you have them both, and sometimes it's one or the other. One of them is a desire to control and embarrass the child. So an example of this: my great-grandfather spoke to my grandmother in his wedding speech at her wedding in baby talk to embarrass her. That was a shitty thing to do. So another reason why people will do this, and this is often tied to alcoholics or people with cluster B personality disorders, like everything else, is they have a deep need to be needed. So the reason that this is considered a form of emotional abuse, on top of it being truly crippling for the child that has gone through this, because they can't do shit for themselves. A lot of times they've had their important documents kept for safekeeping because the parent doesn't trust them. And I gotta say, my kid's 16. She has her own social security card. If she loses it, we're gonna get a replacement, and she's going to pay for it, and that's going to suck for her. But it's better that she learns how to take care and manage her own paperwork when she's 16 than when she's 30. So this is an appropriate time and place for her to learn how to do that. But the reason why it's abuse is it basically puts the emotional needs of the parent before the needs of the child. And kids need to learn how to become independent adults, and a lot of times, you can look at a toddler. No, they yell, "No, I want to do it myself." Kids have an innate drive to become more independent, and when you have somebody who's infantilizing their kids, they're having to basically squash that drive, and it's really, really damaging for their ability to self-regulate, to motivate, do anything on their own. A lot of people who have been infantilized have a really hard time in careers and a really hard time in serious relationships, because honestly, nobody wants to be married to a giant man baby or a giant woman baby who can't do anything for themselves. They can't clean up after themselves. They can't, like I said, doing your own laundry is a pretty common one. And it's really the flip side of the abuse coin for a parent who demands that a child does all of the chores for the entire house by themselves. So the one side is parentification, where you have the adult demanding to basically be the child in the relationship and be supported. And on the other side, you have the adult demanding that the child never ever grow up so that they stay needed and relevant and wanted, when honestly, a good parent, the entire purpose is to create a fully functioning adult human being. And I've had plenty of fights with that with my kid. When she was younger especially, there were lots of times she would much rather I did all of the cleaning, and I'm just like, no, you need to clean your room, and if you don't clean your room within 3 hours is a reasonable time to clean up this mess. If you don't clean it up in that amount of time, I'm gonna go in there and we're gonna clean it together. I'm not gonna do it solo. She does her own laundry, she does dishes, she helps with the chores. She knows how to clean the rest of the house. I don't make her clean the rest of the house. I usually do the bathrooms on my own. And oh man, the lighting here is awful. Sorry, this is a tiny little room at my work. It's called the wellness room. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, there are times when your kids are going to want you to do everything because they're feeling lazy, or they'd rather, read a book or play video games or go hang out with their friends than, do chores or manage their own affairs. So here's a great example of something that was really age appropriate that infantilizers would never, ever, ever allow their child to do. Our kid had a dental appointment, and it had to be this one particular day, and that was the day she had a final. So we were like, okay, well, here's the times. You need to talk to your teachers and tell us what's going on. So she arranged to take one final a little early, and another final she was going to stay late one day and take half of it, and then take the other half during lunch the next day. So basically she went to her teachers and she told them what the situation was. I have this doctor's appointment, I have to go, we couldn't schedule it for any other day, and like, this is when it has to be. So she went and took care of it all of herself, and if she hadn't, we were there as a backstop. But there's a big difference between being the controlling force in the kid's life and being the backup when things go bad. And when you have a teenager, you need to take a step back and you need to be the backup. Because my kid's 16. In 2 more years, she's out of my house. And if she asks me for help, I'm here. But she basically needs to be able to run her own life on her own. So something else that you'll see with parents who infantilize is really inappropriate and age inappropriate rules about dating. Oh, you're 26. And you're college educated and you live on your own. You're not allowed to date. Like, what the fuck is that? Or being inappropriately overly involved in their romantic relationships. Mothers who can't stop, basically their entire identity is mom. They have nothing else. So when their adult children start leaving the house, they do everything they can to basically shove them back in the womb. It's really, really not healthy. And a lot of people who've gone through this is like, oh, well, my mom just cares so much. She just loves me so much. She's crippled me. No, that's not love. It's not. It's abuse, and it's putting your needs way behind her emotional wants. And it's really, really, really damaging. And unfortunately, it's hard to see from the inside how damaging that is until you get away from it. So yeah, I'm hoping to be able to cover a lot of these during my breaks at work. If you want more information about this, I recommend checking out the Out of the Fog webpage. If you just do a Google search for Out of the Fog Infantalization, you'll basically get directly to the page, and I've linked that a lot on Just No Mill because it's really, really common, especially when you've got like a youngest kid who's moving out of the house. Really, really common to see. Also really common to see in kids who are raised by their grandparents, because they know the kids grow up and they really want to keep them babies forever. And sometimes it's not babies. Sometimes you want to keep them like 7. Grandparents tend to do this a little bit anyway. I had a big blowout with my mother-in-law because she was insisting on cutting all of my kids' food when she was like 7 and 8 years old. And I'm like, she's old enough to manage her own silverware. You need to let her, like, if she struggles a little bit with cutting up a steak, you just need to let her do it. But it wasn't about my kid learning decent knife skills. It was about my mother-in-law wanting to feel needed and be involved in the feeding of the child when she was really old enough to feed herself. So that's just one little example. There's lots of them, and if you are in a romantic relationship with someone who has been infantilized, don't be surprised if they expect you to be mommy, like cook for them and clean up after them and tuck their shirt in, and if they're messy, wipe up their little faces, because that's what they've been taught love is, and that's not love, it's control. And it has nothing to do with what's good for the kid. It has everything to do with the emotional gratification of the adult. And when you're in a situation where an adult is emotionally or otherwise gratifying themselves at the expense of a child, it's abuse. So that's it for today. I'll see y'all later. Bye.